had the vision, but I'd never built a company. 8.5 million toys end up in landfill every year. And this idea just got louder and louder in my head to the point that I thought, if I'm not going to do it, who
Welcome
is?
to this week's episode of Women Are Good Business, the podcast with me, Sam Cooper-Gray, your host. Please join me in welcoming Sophia Jarvis, who is the founder of Mere Wealth, to the podcast this week, who's going to tell us her up and down journey of leaving a full-time job to start a business really based in her passion for helping parents to invest in their children's future. Sophia, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for joining us today. I'm so excited to hear your story and how you became an entrepreneur, how you got into what you do, and all the bumps you've had along the way, because I know there's been a few, some positive, some less so. So I'm just going to start with the big question, kind of, why did you start your business? Tell us a little bit about the story behind what was the light bulb that made you want to go, do you know what, I've got to do this?
Oh, thanks so much, Sam, and thanks for having me as a guest. I'm very excited to be here. It's such an honour. So I'll start at the beginning. I have spent over 10 years now in financial services, started my career at Schroders in investments, and then was with them both in London and moved with them to the Middle East, where I was based in Dubai. And then about 5 years ago, came back from Dubai due to COVID, like many of us ended up finding ourselves in situations that we hadn't expected. So I was unemployed, living back at home at my parents, thinking, what am I going to do? And I felt this need and this want to use the knowledge that I'd built up in the B2B investment world and start helping Mr. and Mrs. Smith with their own personal finances. I was a chartered financial analyst as well, still am. And so I just really wanted to use the experience that I'd already built up and help people. So I retrained as a family wealth manager. I joined St. James's Place and I built a book of clients to about 150. And over those few years of doing that, the same conversation kept coming up time and time again, which was, I wish that we had started investing sooner, 20, 30 years ago. And unfortunately, we can't go back in time. But the conversation naturally then steered towards investing for children because we can start early for them. And so I was setting up children investment accounts in my clients' own children, godchildren, grandchildren, nieces, nephews, etc. And the two accounts that I was setting up for them was the Junior Stocks and Shares ISA, which is a tax-free junior account that a child will access when they turn 18. It automatically converts to an adult Stocks and Shares ISA, so they can continue that investment journey if they want. And then a junior pension, which I know we've spoken about before, and nobody knows that a junior pension exists. We'll get onto it, I'm sure, later, but it is the most life-changing account that you can set up for a child, even if you just put £100 in when that child is born, thanks to the power of compound interest, which Einstein said is the eighth wonder of the world. I couldn't agree more. That's just going to grow over time and is likely to be worth over £7,000 by the time that child turns 60. And so I was setting up these two accounts for children. I became
£100.
Yeah, because of compound growth.
Okay, some of these amazing numbers before, if you put it on a regular basis, but you put in just £100, nothing more ever again.
No, and it's because that child has a 60-year time horizon. And so that £100, like a snowball rolling down a hill, it's just going to get bigger and bigger over time. And that assumes a 7% investment return, which is, a fairly fair assumption given, where world equity markets have been. So it's absolutely incredible. The other benefit of a child pension that people don't know about is you actually get a 25% bonus from the government on any money that you put into it. And that's because personal pensions benefit from basic rate income tax relief. So if you put £100 into a child pension, then you can actually get an extra £25 added in for free by the government. So that's the other reason I love them. So my youngest client that I ever worked with was 3 weeks old. I set her up with a child pension. As soon as she got her birth certificate, we set her up. And I loved it. I loved setting up accounts for children. I knew that every child I was setting up these accounts for was going to have a better financial future because of what we had opened for them. But I was getting frustrated at the industry with how long it was taking to set up these accounts. Because I was doing it as a financial advisor, I had to write very long, lengthy suitability reports in order to advise my clients to set up these accounts. And the way the industry is priced is that normally advisors are remunerated on the funds under management, and children have typically a smaller fund under management. So let's say a grandparent put £100 into a junior pension for their grandchild. I might be making £2-3 from that. So commercially, it just wasn't making sense as a business model, even though I love doing it and I knew that it was important to do. And so I asked my peers at other financial advice companies, and I said, are you setting up accounts for children? And a lot of them were saying, we want to, but we're not, because of the length of time it takes and because of the commercial structures in place. And so I looked outside of the wealth management industry and thought there must be an investment app that's doing this really well. So I'll help adults with their own wealth, their own pensions, their own investments, so setting up trusts, more complex things. But when it comes to children, I will just refer them to an investment app. They don't need an advisor, in most scenarios, and they can do it themselves. And it did not exist. And so I just thought, how is there this gap in the market where there's not a provider that's just specifically focused on investing for children and making it a really easy and seamless process? There are a number of legacy providers that offer these products alongside all of the adult products that they offer. But what I was most shocked about when I became a financial advisor, and I know we've spoken about this before, is sadly the level of financial literacy and knowledge in this country. We're not taught these things at school. We're not taught how to invest. We're not even taught what a fund is. And then you're asking somebody to go onto one of the well-known legacy investment app platforms and they being asked to choose from 3,000 funds. It's really overwhelming for a lot of people. And the language used is quite scary. And that was the feedback that I was getting from my clients when I was referring them to these providers. And I also found another pain point was it was really the mothers that really wanted to invest for their children. And actually, a study came out last year from Columbia Threadneedle that said that mothers are 79% more likely to invest for their children than fathers. It's not to say that dads don't want to. I've seen many dads that do, but dads are typically focused on the family wealth as a whole, their own pensions, their own investments, as parents. But mums really want to invest for their children. And actually, it was the mums specifically that were saying, we just don't feel included in the industry. We feel like we've been left out just from the marketing used, the language used, the colour schemes used. And so I thought this is really interesting. There's this growing demand from a specific segment in the market here of mums with young children, but, parents in general, anybody with a child in their life that wants to invest for children, benefit from the power of early compound interest, but there's not the supply. And this idea just got louder and louder in my head to the point that I thought, if I'm not going to do it, who is? And so before I did actually leave my job, though, which I do recommend people doing, and I got this, it was great advice that I got from someone, was validate the idea first. Because there's also another book.
I'm off.
There's a book that someone recommended I read, which I really recommend. It's called The Mum Test, MOM. And it's because if you ask your mum or someone close to you, oh, is this business idea good? Most people will say to you, yeah, it's great, go for it. People don't really tell you the honest truth because they want to support you. But if you ask the questions in the right way, which is what this book helps you do, you uncover actually, is this a good idea? Is there traction here? And so I used that and I did a survey to 400 millennial mums across the UK and I asked them specific questions and the results were quite shocking. And what I found was, and this is from mums from all socioeconomic backgrounds, and I asked them, are you concerned about your children's financial future? 93% said that they are, which is higher than I was thinking. And the biggest concern, which isn't a surprise, is how is my child going to afford their first home? And then the other was actually around retirement. We don't know if the state pension is going to be around when we're older. Hopefully we're going to be living longer. We need much bigger pensions to sustain ourselves. And I think people are quite shocked when they realise the size of pension pot they need for the lifestyle that they would like to have in retirement. And at the same time, though, I uncovered another pain point, which was, this is all well and good. We would love to start investing for our children, but having children is really expensive. I've got 2 girls in nursery and it's eye-watering. And so it's actually, do people have something left over at the end of the month? And if they do, are they going to be putting it away for their children? Or are they going to be using it on, things that they need? And so, and most of us are in a situation where we don't. And so, but the other pain point was that collectively we're spending billions of pounds every single year on gifts for children, on toys that sadly get forgotten, end up in landfill. 8.5 million toys end up in landfill every year. And the average 10-year-old owns 238 toys and plays with just 12. We have this.
Wow, really?
It's just shocking. And I get it, you get that dopamine hit and that warm feeling from giving a child a gift. But actually, particularly when they're really young and they don't understand if they're getting physical gifts or not, why don't we redirect some of that money that's being spent on these toys and these things that just get forgotten? And by the way, clutter homes. Most of us have small homes these days. We can't afford big mortgages. And even my girls are 1, and even already it just feels like it's becoming too much for the number of toys. Why don't we redirect some of that money into investment pots for children? And that's how Mia Wealth was born. So although we are a family investment app, we really focus on making it so easy for parents, grandparents, godparents, uncles, aunties to, within minutes, be able to buy an investment for a child's future.
What an amazing journey to go through. So I get your why now. Like, that is so compelling. Tell me a little bit about the how. So you did the kind of a bit of market analysis first, which I agree with you is incredibly sensible to do, to just do a bit of idea testing before you do a full leap. What happened then? So it kind of reinforced what you knew already. How did you then go about starting the business, turning it into something, getting investment? Kind of take me through that journey a bit, and also do share with us, you had some big life changes while you were on this journey as well. So tell us a little bit about that as well.
Yeah, well, firstly, what's interesting is, as you'll know, businesses iterate very quickly. And so the initial idea that I had for Mia Wealth was actually just to focus on the junior pension. I'm obsessed with the junior pension, but I quickly realised in my survey that yes, people see the need for it, but a lot of families want children to be able to access money sooner than retirement. So the initial idea I had for me was actually called Blossom, completely different colour scheme, and it was just a junior pension app, and then it evolved into Mia. I also realised quickly early on that, we spent quite a lot of time on the design around Blossom, the logo, the colours, like the parts of the business that I enjoy doing. And then somebody told me, have you got it trademarked? And I didn't even know that that's what you had to do. I thought you could just pick a name. So then I realized Blossom's already taken, couldn't take Blossom. So actually finding a name for a company that you can find the social handles, you can get the domain, and that it's available to trademark is quite tricky. But I was able to do it with Mia and Mia Wealth, which was good. That was the first mistake that I made, which was spending time on marketing a company that the name I couldn't use. And then I quickly realize, okay, I'm going to do this now. I'm going to leave my job. So I handed in my resignation. And the next day, as you know, I found out that I was pregnant. It was one of those moments. I mean, you couldn't write it. And then 6 weeks later, I was just feeling I had the worst morning sickness ever. And I was like, this can't be good. Like, something's going on here. So I went for an early scan and found out I was having twins, which would explain the morning sickness. So my husband nearly fell off his chair. I've never seen anyone rush home so quickly in my entire life to open up an Excel spreadsheet and try and calculate like how we're going to afford.
Not you.
Yeah, with my husband. You just left your job. You are now a founder, and as you know, most founders, we don't pay ourselves for a long time. And we'll get onto that, but you're just, trying to be resourceful in the business. We're now about to have twins. It was just one of those moments that you think, right, what have I done? Like, can we get through this? And so I knew very quickly that I needed to bring someone into the business to help, because I had the industry expert knowledge on this specific topic. I had the vision, but I'd never built a company before. I wasn't just building a financial services company, I was building a tech business, and I'd never worked in tech or had, built a platform, a mobile app. So I knew I needed to find what I was calling a chief operations officer, but essentially it was someone that could do all of the skills that I couldn't do. So they had experience building a company, they knew tech inside out, they could do operations, they could do HR, everything. I mean, I was looking for a unicorn, and I interviewed 30 people and I just couldn't find this individual. And it got to January, and so So I left my job in September. I was now January. I was huge at this point, like big bump, very difficult twin pregnancy. It was a high risk pregnancy. And I just thought, I don't know what I'm going to do. I still haven't found this person to help me with this business. And the stars aligned, and I was introduced to Geri, who is now my co-founder. And within the first 5 minutes of that call, I knew that she was who I was looking for. She is I call her the unicorn because she can operate seamlessly across product, operations, tech. This is her 4th startup scale up. She is building this business with solid foundations, brick by brick, and she has an incredible ability to turn my vision and the vision for the business into reality. And I'm so glad she joined the business when she did, because 6 weeks later I gave birth early. And so she essentially took over the business, ran with it whilst I was in hospital with, my girls and focusing on that. And when I came back to the business, that's why I made her co-founder, because she very much operated from day one as if this was her company, which it is.
Tell me, it's quite a journey and unique to female founders, right? Of suddenly finding out you're pregnant. Tell me a little bit about how you went about kind of funding it, bootstrapping to investment, how you went about kind of working out what you needed. I know you're from the finance background, but knowing your numbers is something that comes out really strongly whenever I speak to founders. Some are great at it, some run away from it. Given you're in finance, you're married to a man who loves a spreadsheet, my guess is you ran towards it, not away from it. One of the hardest things with starting a business is actually getting funding. So can you tell us a little bit about that journey in terms of kind of bootstrapping to, if you went for investment, where did you go? How have you found it? And as a female founder, do you think it was different to raising as a man?
Yeah, it's a good question. So in September, when I left my job to start Mia Wealth, my husband and I decided to bootstrap it at the beginning. So we invested £50,000 of our own savings into the company. And that was really the goal for that, was to get the first designs. And now what I know in the tech world, software called Figma. So to get all the screens laid out for the app, and essentially what we would now turn into the MVP, and to continue to validate and test the idea. But I quickly realized that building a fintech requires a lot more capital than just £50,000. And I then thought, okay, the only way I'm going to be able to do this then is go out and fundraise. Although I come from a financial services background, I've never fundraised before. I'd never been involved in that process. This was actually also before AI. So I think now AI can help in terms of just uncovering some of because it's a very opaque world. And so it can help just uncovering what to do. But I really had no idea. And so even though resources were limited, I chose to invest in an incredible woman who was my business coach, and we're still very close. And a lady who actually is how we met, called Sarah King. And so Sarah's a founder herself. She founded a company called Obu. That was my first angel investment. So that's how we connected. But Sarah's passion is to help founders, specifically female founders, learn about fundraising and be able to access capital. And so working with her really helped me understand, firstly, what sort of investors I wanted in the business. That's a question that I hadn't even asked myself. I didn't know the difference between, an angel to VC. And so that was really important to structure what the round actually looked like. And then, as you say, get to know my numbers. So I really needed to know, and it's difficult when you've just got an idea as to actually forecast accurately, but actually just understand, things like runway and how much money we need to get to the next, 6-month milestone, and then 12-month milestone and 18-month milestone. And at the same time, I had this question around, well, when I do go out and fundraise, do I share with investors that I'm pregnant or not? Because is this going to be seen as a potential challenge or, and I hate to say it, but a weakness? And that is unfortunately the stigma that, we've got in the world around, pregnant women and fundraising and starting businesses. But I thought, no, because of the types of investors that I want to have on board with Mia, they are the types of investors that see being pregnant and becoming a mother as a strength. And although it's made the journey so much more challenging, being a mother myself now and solving a problem that other mothers are facing, it's made this business so deeply personal to me. So it is a strength, but it does make the journey more challenging. And also because I was twins, I knew that I was going to be showing very quickly. So any face-to-face meetings, they'd be seeing this bump anyway. So I made the decision early on to be really open about my pregnancy. And then I went out and started meeting with angels because that was what I decided I wanted to raise from to start with. So I got the SEIS, EIS assurance in place, and I raised our first 250,000, the full SEIS round, in 2 weeks. And that was really, yeah, it was incredible, but it was a lot of work went into the time before I actually opened the doors to the funding round. And this is what I recommend to founders when they come to me and ask about that first raise, or any raise really, but that first raise is very much about someone believing in you. It's, I'm not the first person to have this idea, but I believe that I'm the first person to execute it in the way that I see the opportunity and to see the best way of executing it. And so the first investors that come on board, they're really believing in you as a founder or founding team and your vision and your ability to turn that vision into reality. And the way that you can turn a cold lead into a warm lead is through your personal brand. And that's why, I had been building up my personal brand anyway as a family wealth manager. But when I pivoted to Mia, I grew openly. So I was very transparent that, I'd left my job to start this business. These were the challenges that I was seeing, but this was also my why and my mission. And I created a monthly newsletter. And so I would ask people if they wanted to follow the journey to become part of the monthly newsletter. And I would just share, the raw truth of what it's like to be building a business. I was open with my pregnancy as well, as I said. And then when I went to start fundraising, then I just said in the newsletter, look, I'm looking for angels to come and join me on this journey. If you're interested, then book in a meeting. And that was how I found my first angel investors.
The investors.
I love it because the types of investors that we've got on board. So I've only raised from angels so far. I am now into my first institutional round, which is different, and I'm happy to share more on that. But I only raised from angels initially because what I was looking for was individuals that brought more than just capital. They brought expertise in certain areas, and that meant that we were able to keep the team. The team still is very lean, but we've been able to grow quickly and effectively because we've been able to tap into the incredible expertise which are our angel investors. And I know every founder is different, but what was important to Geri and I was that our investors are very much included in the journey. And so not only do we give them monthly newsletters, that's continued, but we also invite them to quarterly investor update meetings. So we have 3 virtual, 1 face-to-face. The face-to-face is my favourite because just getting everyone together in the room, you can get so much out of that conversation. But we very much, we're very transparent when we've had challenges. We lean on them. We ask them for support. They refer us to their network. And also they're there to celebrate the wins too. So having our angels so embedded in Mia has really helped us. And because of my pregnancy, I had to operate rolling closes. So instead of, one sort of price round and that was it with a set start date and end date, I was operating rolling closes as and when, I was fundraising basically up to the point that I gave birth. And then 6 weeks after I gave birth, I did a pitching competition. And we did win the Britain's Got Started Awards, which was amazing. But pitching 6 weeks postpartum to a room full of investors was another interesting challenge on about 1 hour's sleep. But because of that, overall, we've raised 1.5 million over the past year or so. And yeah, we've just opened the doors to our first institutional round. And we're now raising 4 million for our seed round.
And how is that different? Because I think you're right. I mean, raising from angels it's very personal for an angel. How has the journey so far with the institutional round been different?
This is what I wish I had more advice on, to be honest, around how to position your business to an angel versus an institutional investor. Because for an angel, you understand what they're looking for quite early on, because I always say to them, why are you interested in investing in the business? And it might be due to personal reasons, might be because they want to, learn about what it's like to be an investor, and you sort of can understand why they're there on that journey with you quite early on. But with institutional investors, that's not always an open question to ask, and it might be, and maybe that's something that I should be doing more of, but it's understanding what their timeline looks like. Are they working towards a specific exit in a certain number of years, or are they looking also at the whole portfolio and where our company sits within the portfolio, either from a diversification standpoint, or is it potentially too similar to another company in their portfolio? It's just there's really having to uncover a lot around what that institutional investor is looking for and how your business fits into that or doesn't fit into that. And it takes a lot of time fundraising away from the day-to-day of the business. And the day-to-day of the business still is ongoing. That doesn't stop. So you go from, managing a fire that you've got to put out, or, celebrating a win with a team member, or, dealing with the next sprint for the tech team. And then in between those meetings, you're having lots of fundraising conversations. And sometimes it's just difficult to understand, is this the best use of time, having these different conversations with different players that may never be the right fit for them. And so it comes down to transparency, doesn't it? And I try and be transparent from my side. So that's something that I've been learning on the institutional side of things. And also, the data room and what they're looking for and the numbers. And so we've got a new fractional CFO into the business to help with the seed round and to continue afterwards. He's incredible. And he's, really sharpened our numbers to look at things like, we're at a different stage now of the company, but things like, which I know are now important to institutional investors, what's our CAC, what's our LTV CAC ratio, terminology that I had spoken about in the past, but it wasn't second nature to me.
And I think, and you came from finance, although more personal side, I think one of the things that it really rings true when I speak to any founders is all of that language. I mean, even from the industry, and I'm from the industry as well, it's completely alien to you unless you've raised, right? So for the venture capitalists, this is the language they use every day. But actually, for anybody else, it's like having to learn an entirely new foreign language, and knowing where to pitch yourself within that is such a challenge, isn't it?
It really is. And, I learned that the hard way. I remember one call with a VC, and it was a needed call. It was one of those calls which was a really big reality check for me, because, they were rightly asking all of these questions because they need to know that information to then take that onto their investment committee. And I did not have the answers. And that was something that, I had to take away and think, okay, how do I change this now? How do I need to know these answers for my business, but also to be able to have those conversations with, VCs and institutional investors. And another VC actually, fairly asked me, what are you looking for in a VC? And I actually, we have to remember as a founder, it's a two-way street. Just as much as they're looking for a great business opportunity, a great investment opportunity, and see that business, scale and grow and, get the exit eventually. Yeah. What are we looking for as founders as well? And, you have to, it all comes back to the types of investors that you want. And so, there are certain VCs that really support female founders, for example, and support you in other ways. Or there's certain VCs that can offer you introductions to, talent pools or their network, or they've been founders themselves, so they can really support you on, the highs and lows of that journey, understanding it. So my advice to founders is, remember that you are also making that decision. It's not just a one-way decision.
Which is getting the wrong investors, especially if they're institutional. Getting the wrong investor can have a massively negative impact, right? But getting the right investors can be game changing. I want to shift us a little bit to look a little bit more around kind of leadership and mindset as a founder. What has been kind of instrumental in terms of how you run your business with Geri? You've obviously brought her in at a pivotal time. And then made her a co-founder. Like, how do you guys operate together? What are the learns that you've gone through on that journey of being a leader and a founder and a co-founder?
It's, having a co-founder is one of the closest relationships that you'll have. It really is. And it's so important to get that right. And finding one that you complement each other, and that's what Geri and I have very well. The parts of the business that I love doing and I'm naturally good at, which is being the face of the company, talking about Mia and this topic. Honestly, I could talk about it all day, and I probably have an unhealthy obsession with it, but I'm sure most founders do. I love talking to investors. Like, I actually enjoy funding rounds, which I know people might find strange, but I just enjoy having those sorts of conversations and, getting to showcase, the incredible business that we're building. And all of that side of things, it's just my natural strength. Whereas what I'm not good at organization at all. I've been a manager, but not to a big team. So that's something that I've had to learn very quickly, because I do have people that report into me. I am CEO. So I've had to learn very quickly how to become a good manager. But Geri is so naturally brilliant at it. And she just keeps us all in check. She's the reason that we've been able to scale as quickly as we have, because she's just able to have that oversight and bring out the best in every single person. And as I said, turn that vision into reality. But being a leader, you have, as a founder, you have a business idea, and then you start to sort of go down that path and turn it into reality. And then quickly you realize, okay, you've got to build, strong businesses are built by strong teams. So you've got to attract the best talent and retain that talent. So suddenly you have to pivot and become a good leader. And I didn't know how to do that. And so I actually read a book by a friend of mine called Heather Elkington, and it's called Your Boss Era. And the tagline is become the manager everybody wants to work for. And the snippet that she's put in the book, which has just stuck with me, is as a leader, you need to learn to remember to be kind, but not nice. And the difference is that if a nice thing to do would be, you've got somebody reporting into you and they do a piece of work and it's not up to your standard and expectation, and you don't want to hurt their feelings. So instead of telling them, feedback that might hurt their feelings, you actually do the nice thing when you just redo that piece of work yourself and you just pretend it's all okay and sweep it under the carpet. Whereas being kind is actually giving that constructive feedback when it happens, so that you're giving them the ability in a kind way, but giving them that ability to actually change and get better. And so as a leader, that's what I aim to do, is that as and when things are happening, I try my hardest to give constructive feedback in a kind way in order to help the team grow, but also equally celebrate the wins when they happen as well. So we have a wins channel on Slack, and every day, one of us will put something in there, but many times it's actually us praising someone else in the team about a piece of work that they've done. And I think as we are a virtual company, I think that's really important as well, to enhance that team culture.
Absolutely. It's about, I love that phrasing. I think that's so important. Of it's being kind, not nice. I think once you get into the nice, you're not actually helping anybody. It doesn't do anybody any favours, does it? It's a hard one to find the balance, though, isn't it? I think sometimes. So tell us a little bit about the future. Where are you with the app? We've had a little bit about the journey so far. What's your ambition? What's the mission?
So we got our regulatory approval in place last year. We're an appointed representative, and that's great because, gosh, to launch a fintech is one thing, but then to launch a regulated product that's been an eye-opener, even though I've come from financial services. So I've been, dealing with the rules around financial promotions and everything for a long time. But every single screen has to be checked and approved. Every single word, risk warnings, everything, it has to be approved. So that was a big moment for us as a business when we got our approval, so we can officially, go live. And then we were with an agency. They were designing the front end and building the front end of the app. And when I came back from mat leave, we made the decision to actually pull those resources in-house. And that meant that we've had to build a lot of the app ourselves since, but it's been the right call for the business because we have full ownership of everything, and we can test it. And so we've been building, testing, which what feels like forever. But finally, 2 months ago, we launched our MVP into beta. So we have over 2,000 families on our waitlist. We're bringing on families in 100 cohorts. So we've invited 300 so far off the waitlist. We're seeing really great early traction data. We've got 72% of accounts are funded. So there's 100 junior investment accounts now open, 72% are funded. And the data that I'm most excited about is over 50% have set up a regular contribution, a direct debit into that child's future. And that's because we've designed the app specifically to encourage that behavior, because parents are busy. We don't have time to remember to keep, putting money away. And I always used to say to my clients when I was a family wealth manager, see investing as another bill that goes out every month, whatever you can afford. It starts at just £20 with Mia Wealth, and just set it up as a direct debit. You can pause it, cancel it, amend it at any time. It's fully flexible in the app, but at least you know that every month you've just got that little bit that's going away for your child's future. And the way we've designed the app is to feel like a Scandinavian Pilates studio. That is the brief that the tech team are working on, even from the shade of green that we use, to the language that we use, to the videos along the journey. Everything is designed to feel really calm and also to give that dopamine hit every time you open it. It's separate from your other, banking app, your investment apps. If you invest yourself, it's just that safe place for your child's home that you can keep coming back to time and time again, and knowing that every time you open the app, you can see the projected value for your child's future and that you're doing something great for that child.
Amazing. I'm so excited for what's next for you. Any final thoughts that you'd like to share? Maybe if there's a woman listening who's thinking about starting a business, what would you say to her? Other than maybe don't get pregnant at the same time. Although maybe that might not be the advice, maybe do, because it hasn't stopped you. So
yeah, funnily enough, actually, it's a good question, because getting pregnant at the same time as starting the business has made me so much more resilient, and you need to have resilience to start a business. And so to anyone saying to me, should I start a business? I think the key thing is to just think, are you completely obsessed with solving this problem? Like, you have to come back to your mission and your why, because it is really hard. You're going to have days where you think, what am I doing? Like, the security of my job, my 9 to 5. And now I feel like some days I'm just fighting fires all around me. But then you also have the highest highs. Like, there's no greater feeling than seeing your business succeed, because it does feel like your own child. But you have to have resilience, and you have to have that deep connection to your why. And so that's what my advice would be, is just really think, on the hard days, what is that thing that's going to help you get through it and drive you through it? Because particularly as the founder or founders, the team will look to you in those tough moments to get you through, to get them through. And if you're not sure, if you're not that obsessed with what you're trying to solve, then maybe think of another idea that you are until you have that. And many of us, we have so many business ideas, don't we, if we're entrepreneurial? Oh, do that. But then there's one that it keeps coming back to you. That's what happened with Mia. It was like, I think Stephen Bartlett said this once, he puts all his business ideas on a shelf in his head, but it's the one that he just keeps coming back to. It's like that thing that he can't get out of his mind. That's the one that you should go for.
Well, I agree with that wholeheartedly, because that is how Women Are Good Business started. Yeah. So that brings us full circle round to the end of the interview. So thank you so much for sharing your journey with us. It's been so interesting listening to you, and I think your learns on investing and raising, getting investment and raising have been really interesting, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners will really benefit from that, because it is like this secret thing that until you have to know about it, you don't, right? So thank you so much for sharing. We will put a link to the app and the website in the show notes for anyone who's interested. But good luck. I'm watching with bated breath as Mia grows and we see you be successful. So thank you for sharing your journey with us.
Oh, thank you so much, Sam. It's been a pleasure to be on the podcast.
That's a wrap for this week's episode of Women Are Good Business podcast. And thank you for listening. Now I need your help. We want to make the podcast huge. We want more people to hear about the stories of female founders. We want to get the best experts in the world so we can grill them with your questions. And we can only do that if people know where to find us. So please help us make the podcast go viral. Like, follow, subscribe, leave us a review, drop us into a WhatsApp group. Whatever is the best way to share, please do share and come with us on the journey as we talk to lots of female founders and we show the world that women really are good business.